Welcome to another episode of the All Tens Podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh West. With me, as always, Clay Harrison. Today, Clay, we wanted to talk about a special event that happens outside of the session rooms with our clients. It's the state of the company. What you got?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. State of the company is what you do after your quarterly session. So for our listeners who run on EOS, we go do a bunch of good work as a leadership team and come up with all these great rocks and all that kind of stuff. And then you got to do something with it. And the thing you got to do with it is go to the company and give them a state of the company address.
This episode of the All Tens Podcast is powered by Stretty, the EOS software people love. With EOS Pure Tools, plus additional communication and collaboration tools, you can run on EOS and accomplish all of your daily tasks all in one place. Learn more at Stretty.com. That's STRETY.com.
It's still surprising to me that we have a sponsor. Shout out Stretty. But state of the company, we got to work on our segues in and out of the sponsor read. Like, it's a work in progress here, listeners. You're literally watching the sausage get made. But state of the company. So, like I was saying before that masterful word from our sponsor, when you're doing that, when you do that great work as a leadership team, if it just happens in a vacuum, like the tree falls in the woods, and like I don't know, when I work with leadership teams, like one of the things we talk about every time is like clear and aligned, right? Clarity and alignment is what I'm looking for that team to find. But the other thing that's just a part of the leadership team is it's got to be compelling. You gotta get them to come along with you, the rest of those people in the company. And one of the tools that we talk about is after your quarterly, go out and talk to the company, and we call that a state of the company address, and it has 3 components. A look back at where we've been, a recalibration of where we're at today, and where we're headed in the future. And if you think about that, internalize that a little bit, it's kind of like the VTO, but backwards. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Where we've been is talking about, did we get the rocks done? If it's like towards the beginning of the year, you might be talking about whether or not we hit last year's goals. But you're looking back, you're on the traction page of the VTO, looking backwards a little bit, giving them, being accountable to your team as to whether or not you did the things that you were going to said you were doing, your rocks and your goals. Then you move to where we're at. And this is where, when I was running a big company, 100-person company, where we're at with all the celebratory stuff, right? Like what's happening today within the business. This is where we would give out core values awards, celebrate team member anniversaries, just kind of acknowledging celebrating who we are, right? You might also use that time to kind of recalibrate on, I think I've said recalibrate twice already in this episode, which is weird. But you might give an update on the progress you're making towards your 1-year plan, right? Like we had a goal of 40 million and we're at 20 million. It's halfway through the year, on track. Cool. Working your way back up the VTO. And then the last part. So we've talked about where we've been, where we're at with the celebrations, and maybe like kind of giving people an idea of where we're at in terms of achieving the things that we've talked about. And then reminding them of what the future looks like. And that's kind of the vision page. This is where you kind of refocus on core values, core focus, core target. These are all good reminders to them. This is what we're building towards, like always working on. Anyway, so where we've been, where we're at, where we're headed. Yeah.
Clay, you use the words clarity and alignment. When I think about it, the term that gets me excited is the transparency of it all. When we talk to our teams, particularly in the early sessions, there's a point where we talk about a Harris poll that was conducted where many employees don't understand the priorities of the company, don't understand their role in helping achieve those priorities. And also, sadly, there are some employees that simply don't care. And I feel that the state of the company meeting really helps with all of those, because the priorities of the organization are crystal clear and you're clearly communicating it to everyone all at the same time. I think it's important for the listeners also to understand that the state of the company is with everyone present. Thus, there's not that weird game of telephone or scuttlebutt going around the office where someone can say, oh, did you hear what somebody in leadership told somebody else? And then like there's all this weird gossip going on. If you're hearing it directly from leadership and everyone's present, then no one can come around after the fact and say, oh, did you hear about that thing that's happening? Or I don't think that thing went well. Everybody can say, yeah, I was there. I know what I heard.
Yeah.
And when we talk about getting everybody aligned and all of the human energy moving in the same direction, this is a great opportunity to do that. And no, you and I can't have sessions with 100 people inside of a room, but to the extent that we can work with the leadership team, and then the decisions that are made and the work product that comes out of that is then clearly communicated to everyone in the organization, that's a pretty powerful moment. Additionally, I just want to come back to that transparency aspect of it, where if the leadership team is going to be open and honest with every single person inside of the organization, and for what the major rocks were to say, yeah, we didn't hit that one, I think that goes a long way and get a lot of trust and credibility from the entire staff, because you know that leadership is shooting you straight.
No notes, perfect points. I think that the thing for our listeners who run on EOS, one of the things that I always thought about, and have seen this in other organizations, that kind of integrator might leave that first where we've been, kind of being the accountable. Typically, an integrator, one of the key roles for their seat is to execute the plan. So that integrator showing up and saying, here's what we got done last quarter, here's what we missed on, being pretty dry, right? Just reporting the facts. Visionaries, in my experience, tend to be a little bit more the people who have the emotional capital to spend a little bit, with the team. And integrators, I shouldn't paint with such a broad brush. But generally, integrators are the doers, the getting things done, and the visionaries are the rah-rah people. That's like a very gross kind of like generalization, but just bear with me. When you talk about where we're heading in the future, visionaries are probably going to be more compelling. And if you're sitting there with both hats on, just recognize that you're doing those are kind of two different things. And so clarity, transparency, I love that. I want the team to see us as leaders being accountable for doing the things that we said we're going to do. The other thing that this is like a little passion of mine, is that I want those leaders, whether it's the visionary or other members of the leadership team, that when they speak about the future, they do so with passion. They do so in a way that makes people want to ride that wake, man. Right? People are like, holy shit, this dude believes it, or this gal believes it. We got to make this happen. And I think that's actually the magic sauce, that clarity and accountability, that transparency, that alignment on the leadership team, plus a vision of the future that people, at first, it takes them a minute to just hear it. If, we say all the time, you got to hear something 7 times to hear it the first time, right? So they got to hear you be consistent with it. Then they got to see you put some wins on the board. And they're like, holy shit, these people are doing what they said they're going to do. Maybe that $100 million goal in 10 years isn't as crazy as we thought. And then that's the magic thing that like Gino talks about in traction, is that once you start talking about the future a lot and then and start seeing that in the same way, everybody, that transparency really matters. They see that VTO come to life through this state of the company meeting. All of a sudden, you're not pulling them along. They're pushing you towards it. And like, that's the craziest cool thing about EOS that there's a lot of stuff about EOS I love, but when the whole organization starts to be the wind in the sails, not just the entrepreneur like huffing and puffing in the sail, hoping the boat moves, that's freaking cool. Right. And so anyway, state of the company, super important. And your point around, they got to hear from the leaders, not from their leader's boss, their manager's boss's boss's boss. They got to hear from you. They're working for an entrepreneurial organization, not fucking McDonald's. whatever, a lot of McDonald's franchise owners are entrepreneurs. I get it. Never mind. That's a bad example. But you know what I'm saying? Not a Fortune 500 company with 87 layers of management.
100%. And, there's also, we've covered the big and broad things that happen with the state of the company. Now I want to dive into some more specific opportunities that we have with it and tie it to some other things in EOS. And one of the things specifically is, we really talk about having the right people in the right seats. And the right people are those people that consistently share and exhibit our core values. And when we make those values, certainly we talk about them to the teams. And one of the ways that we can talk about them in total is during that state of the company and making sure and reiterating the core values out there. Because I get the question a lot of times from clients, how do we make sure that we migrate those core values throughout the organization? Yes, we decided what those are, extracted those through that discovery exercise, and leadership teams in lockstep on what they are. And, to keep things fresh, but also to really in action demonstrate to everyone throughout the organization that they're not just words on a wall and that you really are paying attention. Don't sleep on the part of the level 10 meeting that you have weekly where we ask for customer and employee headlines. And this is where I encourage my teams to, in the moment, take notes and save them, because when something happened last week and somebody did something really great in the organization and they really prove that they really share that value, take note of that and save them week over week, because it's going to be difficult for you to remember. And then when we get to the state of the company, when we cover off on what those core values are, as you go through each one, have some real examples and call people out for those core values in front of everyone and really give that person their shine and light them up for that. But also, if you're standing there and you see that, there's no other conclusion to reach than, oh, they're serious about that. They're paying attention. They're keeping track, because he just told us something that them did 7 weeks ago.
Right.
And it's also just a way to keep it fresh. So that's one opportunity that you have when you've got everyone gathered there on something that is outside of that P&L, but is absolutely critical and important for the team health.
It's the same thing as getting up there and saying we did or didn't do our rocks. It's the same thing as saying we did or do not pay attention to our core values. Throughout the state of the company speech, you're being the leader. And, we say this on Focus Day, which is great leaders kind of act like great parents to the organization. They're consistent. They say the same things over and over again. They walk the walk, right? And whether you're talking about rocks or issues or 3-year picture or marketing strategy or core focus or core values, lighting all that up with context and real world applications is the way that the VTO moves off of a piece of paper and into shared by all. Into the world of everyone not only understands it, not only does everybody like it, everybody wants to be a part of making it come true. That's all we're going for by doing these state of the companies. Before we wrap up this episode, I do want to mention that there's a rhythm to the world, as to the EOS world. And so sometimes I get a question from my clients around well, shouldn't our departmental quarterlies happen before our leadership team quarterlies so we know what the priorities are and some sort of stuff like that? And I always answer it the same way. I was I guess it depends. Is it the leadership team or the follower team? Because if it's the leadership team, then we tell them what's important. They don't tell us. And that sounds really harsh. But the way the rhythm should work is the leadership team gets together and establishes priorities. Then the leadership team goes out and shares the good news through the state of the company so that everyone hears it. Just like Josh said earlier in this episode, everyone hears from the leadership team what the priorities are. So it's leadership team quarterly, state of the company, then departmental quarterlies come after state of the company. because I want everyone in the company to have heard from the leadership team what's going on, where we've been, where we're at, where we're headed, before they go in and start setting their departmental goals and rocks. That rhythm is really important. So it should cascade down. Leadership team, state of the company, departmental, then after the departmental, sub-departmental, quarterlies, if you're so big to need those. But that's the order. Leadership team leads. Leadership team makes tough decisions. Leadership team shares the good news. Then everybody else does their work based on what the leadership team has shared. Right?
You said it. And I'll end my portion of the episode with a nugget and with a question that I get from clients occasionally when we talk about state of the company, which is, are we really going to cover the entire VTO? And are we going to tell them everything that's on it? And I answer that question with a question. How are they going to help you achieve the plan if you don't tell them what it is?
On that, I think that'll do it for this episode. That's a great nugget. My name is Clay. He's Josh. We're EOS Implementers, and we love helping entrepreneurs build great businesses. Thanks for joining us today on the All Tens podcast. We're so happy you're a listener. Please don't just listen, also follow and subscribe if you can. Share with your friends. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.